Imagine this. It's 11 p.m., you're lying in bed, and your phone buzzes with a notification. Your bank balance just dropped after rent went out. And suddenly, your brain starts running worst-case scenarios. What if the car needs new brakes next week? What if your landlord raises the rent again? What if you get sick and can't work for a few days? What if your laptop dies right before a big deadline? Most of us have been there. And here's the thing, almost everyone assumes that the solution to this anxiety is simply more income. Earn more and the stress disappears, right? But that's not actually true. There's one specific number that, once you hit it, changes the way your brain handles money completely. It's not $1 million, it's not even close. That number is $10,000. In this video, I want to break down exactly why this number matters so much, what changes in your life once you reach it, the science behind why it works, and most importantly, how you can realistically get there even if right now it feels completely impossible. Stick around till the end because the last part of this video is honestly the most useful piece of advice I can give anyone trying to build savings for the first time. Let's start with what life actually looks like before you have any cushion at all. When your bank account is sitting close to zero, every single purchase becomes a tiny negotiation with yourself. You're standing in line at the pharmacy doing mental math about whether you can afford both the medicine and groceries this week. You're skipping a friend's birthday dinner, not because you don't want to go, but because you're embarrassed to admit that splitting a $40 bill would throw off your entire week. You're checking your account balance before you put gas in the car, not after. This isn't a small inconvenience. It's a constant background hum of stress that never really turns off. Researchers actually have a term for this. It's sometimes called a scarcity mindset, and it eats up a surprising amount of your daily mental bandwidth. You're not just broke, you're busy being broke. Your brain is constantly running calculations in the background, and that takes energy away from everything else: your job performance, your relationships, even your sleep. And here's the cruel irony. When you're operating from this place of scarcity, you're actually more likely to make decisions that keep you stuck. You take the first job offer instead of negotiating because you can't afford to wait for something better. You stay in a bad apartment because moving feels too risky, even if the new place would actually save you money. You avoid conversations about raises because you're afraid of rocking the boat when you desperately need the paycheck. You put off going to the doctor for something minor because even a small copay feels like it might break the bank that week. This is the starting point for most people. And it's exactly why the first $10,000 hits so differently than any amount after it. So why 10,000 and not 5,000 or 20,000? The honest answer is, it's not a magic number written in stone somewhere, but it tends to be the point where something fundamentally shifts. Here's why. First, think about what $10,000 actually covers in real life. Most car repairs, even big ones like a transmission replacement, fall somewhere between $1,500 and $4,000. A trip to urgent care, a broken bone, or a few nights in the hospital, even with mediocre insurance, usually lands in a similar range. And if you suddenly lost your job, $10,000 could realistically stretch to cover 3 to 5 months of basic expenses for most people. Enough time to actually search for the right next role instead of panicking and accepting whatever offer comes first just to keep the lights on. In other words, $10,000 isn't an arbitrary milestone. It happens to line up almost perfectly with the size of the disasters that most commonly derail people financially. Once you've got that buffer, the kinds of emergencies that used to feel like the end of the world become annoying, inconvenient, but survivable. And that distinction between survivable and catastrophic changes everything about how you experience daily life. Now here's the part that's genuinely fascinating. This shift isn't just financial, it's biological. When researchers study people under chronic financial stress, they consistently find elevated levels of stress hormones, disrupted sleep patterns, and even measurable changes in how the brain processes decision-making. Financial insecurity isn't just in your head. It has real, physical effects on your body. People under constant money stress often report headaches, trouble concentrating, and that wired but exhausted feeling at the end of the day. So when someone builds up that first $10,000 cushion, what they're really doing is removing a constant low-grade stressor from their life. And when that stressor disappears, people often describe it less like, "I got richer," and more like, "I can finally breathe." It's not a dramatic fireworks moment. It's quieter than that. It's more like a tension in your shoulders you didn't even realize was there, slowly releasing. Now here's something that surprises a lot of people. Most folks who build up an emergency fund of $10,000 almost never actually spend it on emergencies. That sounds backwards, right? Why build a safety net if you're not going to use it? But that's exactly the point. The value isn't in spending it, the value is in having it. Think about it like this. It's the same reason you feel calmer driving with a full tank of gas versus running on empty, even if you don't end up needing that extra fuel on this particular trip. Just knowing it's there changes how you drive. You take that slightly longer route. You don't panic when you see a detour sign. The fuel sitting in the tank is doing its job just by existing. The same thing happens with money. Once that cushion exists, people start making completely different choices. Not reckless choices, but braver ones. They finally ask for the raise they've been too nervous to bring up for the past year. They sign up for a certification course that costs a few $100s because they know that even if it doesn't pay off immediately, it won't sink them financially. They start saying yes to opportunities they would have automatically said no to before. A weekend trip with friends, a side project that might lead somewhere, a chance to try something new. There's also a social side to this that doesn't get talked about enough. When you're financially stressed, you tend to withdraw. You stop going out, you stop networking, you avoid situations where you might have to spend money you don't have. You make excuses. You say, maybe next time, so often that people stop asking. But financial breathing room tends to bring people back into the world. And ironically, that's often where new opportunities come from. A casual conversation at a friend's barbecue. An introduction to someone hiring for a role you'd be perfect for. A chance meeting that turns into something bigger. None of that happens if you're avoiding social situations out of financial anxiety. Now, let's talk about the part that I think matters more than the dollar amount itself. And that's who you become in the process of getting there. A lot of people try to save money the way they try to start a diet. They go all in for a month, cutting out coffee, canceling every subscription, eating rice and beans every single night. And then, predictably, they burn out. A few weeks later, they're right back where they started, except now they also feel like a failure, which makes the next attempt even harder to start. The people who actually reach that first big savings milestone tend to approach it completely differently. They're not trying to save money for 3 months and then go back to normal. They're trying to become someone who saves money permanently as part of who they are. That's a completely different goal, and it requires a completely different mindset. Here's what's interesting. The first $1,000 is almost always the hardest. It requires real changes. Maybe cooking at home more often, maybe picking up a few extra hours at work, maybe finally canceling that streaming service you forgot you were even paying for. It's uncomfortable, it takes deliberate effort, and honestly, it can feel kind of slow and unrewarding at first. But something strange happens after that first 1,000. The second 1,000 comes noticeably easier. Not because anything external changed, your income is probably still the same, but because you changed. You've already built the habits. You've already rewired some of your automatic spending behaviors. The decisions that used to require willpower now happen almost without thinking. By the time you're working toward your 6th or 7th 1,000, saving money has started to feel less like a sacrifice and more like just what you do now. It's become part of your routine, the same way brushing your teeth is. This is why so many financial experts will tell you that the first big milestone is less about the math and more about proving something to yourself. Once you've shown yourself that you can consistently set money aside, even small amounts, even when it felt impossible, your entire relationship with money starts to shift. You stop seeing every dollar as something that's either spent or gone forever. You start seeing money as something that can actually work for you, sit there quietly, and grow. Let's talk about something psychologists call decision fatigue. Every single day, you make dozens, maybe hundreds, of tiny financial decisions, often without even realizing it. Do I bring lunch from home or buy it? Do I take the toll road to save time or the longer free route to save a couple of dollars? Do I get the oil change now or push it back another month because money's tight this week? Do I buy the slightly more expensive option that'll last longer or the cheap one that'll need replacing sooner? Each one of these decisions on its own seems trivial, but they add up. And when you're financially stressed, almost every decision has a money component attached to it, which means your brain is constantly running cost-benefit calculations all day, every day, often without you even consciously noticing it's happening. By the end of the day, you're mentally drained, and you can't always pinpoint why. Now imagine what happens when a huge chunk of those decisions simply disappear. Not because you suddenly have unlimited money, but because the stakes are low enough that you can just make the choice that feels right, without the looming fear of, what if I need this money later for something more important? People who've crossed that $10,000 threshold often describe this exact feeling. Walking through a grocery store and, for the first time in years, buying what they actually want for dinner, instead of automatically reaching for whatever's cheapest. It's a small moment, almost forgettable in isolation, but it represents something much bigger. Mental space that used to be occupied by financial anxiety is now free to be used for literally anything else. Creativity, relationships, career growth. Just rest. And here's the kicker. When that mental space opens up, people often become more productive, not less. They're not distracted by background financial stress anymore, so they have more capacity to focus on the things that actually move their life forward. Whether that's doing better work, learning a new skill, or just being more present with the people around them. Okay, so by now you might be thinking, this all sounds great, but $10,000 sounds completely unrealistic for where I'm at right now. And I want to be really clear about something. That feeling is completely normal, and it's also temporary. Here's the truth. Almost nobody saves $10,000 by making one big, dramatic change. It doesn't usually come from a sudden raise or a windfall. It happens through dozens of small, boring, repeatable habits stacked on top of each other over time. Start absurdly small. I mean it. If all you can manage right now is $20 a month, that's completely fine. The goal at the very beginning isn't the amount, it's the habit itself. You're training yourself to treat saving as non-negotiable, the same way you treat rent or your phone bill, something that just happens automatically, without a debate every single time. Once that habit is locked in, increasing the amount later becomes much easier because you're not fighting your own instincts anymore, you're just adjusting a number on a screen. A useful trick a lot of people use is to automate the entire process. Set up a separate savings account that you don't see on a daily basis and have a small fixed amount move there automatically the day you get paid, before you even see it sitting in your main account. Out of sight really does mean out of mind, and over time, those small, almost invisible transfers add up far faster than most people expect. 6 months in, people are often genuinely surprised by how much has quietly accumulated. It also helps enormously to track your progress somewhere visual. A simple chart on your wall, an app on your phone, even just a sticky note on the fridge where you color in a box for every $100 saved. Watching that number slowly climb, even in small increments, creates a sense of momentum that keeps you going, especially during those early months when it can feel like absolutely nothing is happening and the goal still feels miles away. And one more thing worth mentioning, don't wait until you have extra money to start. There's rarely ever a moment in life where money just feels extra and unaccounted for. The people who build savings aren't the ones who happen to have leftover cash. They're the ones who decided, often with very little, that a small piece of every paycheck belongs to their future self before it belongs to anything else. So here's the big takeaway. $10,000 isn't really about the money itself. It's about what that number represents. It's the line between constantly reacting to your finances and finally being able to plan around them. It's the difference between every emergency feeling like a crisis and every emergency feeling like just another Tuesday. And the wild part is, the version of you that exists after reaching that number isn't just someone with more money sitting in a bank account. It's someone with different habits, different confidence, a calmer nervous system, and a completely different relationship with risk and opportunity. The number changes, but honestly, the person changes more. If this video gave you a new way to think about your own savings goals, let me know in the comments where you're starting from right now, and I'll see you in the next one.